In the most recent chapter of Closing of the American Mind by Alan Bloom, a main theme that he was talking about was the man's relationship within its family and how it's changed through generations. In the deep past, for better or worse, the man used to see his family, and his family saw the man as if it was his property. And I mean, he was the king dictator until kind of the kids moved out, and always the dictator over the wife. And for better or worse reasons, of course, I mean, the children and the wife wanted to separate from this cause, and they wanted to have their own freedoms back, to say. And with that, they wanted to maintain the same relationship that the man supported absolutely everything, like if it was his property, kind of. They wanted all the reward with no risk. And I mean, of course, it is noble if you want to separate from that kind of relationship, but you cannot eat your cake and have it too.
Yeah, so I completely disagree with the idea of being noble. I completely would also argue that we've lost the plot in modern time. You can't go against biology. No matter how much you want to, you just can't do it. Bloom makes the comment that you can legislate that the male nipple must give milk, but it's not going to change the underlying reality of it. The one thing that comes to mind is if anyone's actually taken the time to see an older movie called Inherit the Wind, there's a great scene where it's basically set up at a trial, and one of the lawyers was making an argument to the jury, and he's like, listen, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, progress has never been a bargain.
Gentlemen, progress has never been a bargain. You have to pay for it.
I feel there's a little man that stands behind a counter that says something like this as he's addressing the jury. He's like, Madam,
you may vote, but at a price. You lose the right to retreat behind the powder puff or your petticoat.
You may have the right to vote, but with that, you lose the right to retreat behind the powder puff or the petticoat. It's like, you, sir.
Mister, you may conquer the air, but the birds will lose their wonder, and the clouds will smell of gasoline.
You might fly through the sky, on an aeroplane, but the clouds will smell of gasoline and distance will lose its enchantment. You, sir, over there, you might have the telephone, but in doing so, the distance and the communication, the ability to write will diminish. The point is that for everything, it's almost like there's a zero-sum game. So progress, again, it's never really a bargain. And it gets back to this concept where I think people generally want to have it all. And in a strange way, if you don't necessarily have a lot of the bad, you kind of forget why you need to do certain things in order to have it very well. Kevin Samuels would oftentimes go on and talk about the world doesn't owe you understanding, and what's more, as he oftentimes would say, like, men, and he's completely correct on this, men built this world. Like, if you were to wave a magic wand, something were to happen or whatever, right? You suddenly, you create two, separate universes or whatever, right? One is, only male, and one is, only female. Which universe could actually survive? And short of actually the reproductive function, and when I say that, I mean the actual act of bearing children, at least as it stands for right now. So beyond that, who could actually survive? And the answer is, well, of course the men could survive or whatever, because they're the ones who built the infrastructure. They're the ones who understand how to get their hands dirty or whatever, right? That's not to say that some women can't do it, but it's to say most women, on average, that's just really not a skill set they're built for. And there's no shame in admitting that, I would argue, even though it is anathema to admit in today's society. If you want to see a more, humoral or more whimsical version of this, what was that Survivor show, Josh, where they had men surviving on an island, women surviving on an island, and it was just the producers actually had to step in to help the women because it was just a complete cluster on that front. So to your point about people wanting it better, by all means, people want it better, but when you have this desire to basically extract resources from the male, and then what's more, whenever a male tries to speak out, if you villainize the male and say, well, of course you say it because of privilege or whatever, blah 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 reason, it's just utter, well, I shouldn't use those words, but my point is that it's, as you say, Josh, is people want to have their cake and eat it too. And my attitude in this front is that if this is what the ladies want, by all means give them what they want, but you give them the consequences as well. And when they get the consequences, it's not blame someone else. It's not, no, we're not playing this game. This is what you wanted, and this is what you got. You want to ride the carousel all throughout your 20s and then find out that nobody wants you anymore, and you're having to settle for men you don't really think are applicable, and what's more, you can't pair bond, you can't find a family, you get bored or whatever, right? Well, those are your choices. And that's your choices of you made of being, a strong, empowered young woman who could have it all.
Yeah, so this book was written in the late 80s, and Bloom was just talking about the trends that he saw playing out, that men were separating from the family for these reasons, because women no longer, I'm using these words harshly, wanted to be seen as property. Like that is a very strong word, because this was a very mutualistic relationship back in the past. I mean, if you ask your grandparents or great grandparents, I mean, the woman wanted to just be home with the kids and they wanted to support a family. It wasn't, the man wanted to provide for his family as if he wanted to provide for anything that would be seen as if it was his property. It's just the kind of the way that human structure evolved.
Yeah. Or it's just, instead of thinking of property from like the male perspective, it's not like, oh, this is what I own and I can do whatever. Like, no, think of it as like, this is what like I've built up. This is what I can protect. Like that's really and property is not that.
Yeah, it was the word that
the word
Bloom
works.
used. Yeah,
Bloom's right, but not to speak for Bloom because I'm nowhere near that level. But the way I would suggest might be a way to kind of reframe it. If properties like bristling people, it's like, imagine like you work on a project, or like you work on something, and like you take pride in this from the male perspective. You see this as something that you built, and because you built it, you want to care for it. You want to protect it. You want to nurture it. Like, again, this is all, I think, very, very normal, very, very natural, and like literally, like, men will die for this.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like it is just what they are meant to do. I mean, they want to protect and support their family. I mean, a man is going to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to start his second job so he can make more money to support his family so they have better lives.
Yeah, and it's because the male views it as his. It's the key thing on that, or whatever. And it's not like pejorative. It's like he takes pride in it, and he wants to protect it. He wants what's best for it.
And I mean, if you guys ask your mothers, I mean, would your mothers or any woman, would they want to be supported by a male to where they would never have to work and they could just kind of live a extremely comfortable life raising kids? I would say 99% of women are going to hop on that and say, absolutely, that sounds fantastic. I know my mom said that many times. Oh, that sounds fantastic. I'd love to just kind of be home all day, clean the house, take care of the kids, and do these small tasks. Because that was just the roles that people played back in the past. But now, at least in the late 80s, when Bloom was foreseeing this happening, and I would argue exacerbated many times over since when he talked about this, now the roles have been almost completely perversed, and women no longer want to have that kind of a relationship, because it is they're losing that freedom of being with whoever they want whenever they want, because they no longer see that as a vice and now a virtue, another theme that always gets brought up in the book. And so men, they are now separating themselves from that reality, and the women are starting to get upset because they still want that, but they want to do other things too.
Yeah, cake and eating it too, and like only when it's too late, and it's not to get too much into gender, and all that nonsense here, but like there is an entire. So I was born in the mid '80s, Josh. You were born in the early '00s, and like there's an entire generation of women, going on an entire second generation of women that have been sold a bill of goods, and when they time out and realize they cannot do what they really want to do, and that's or arguably be a mom and start a family, with a good mate that they can trust and rely on, there's going to be some sparks that fly. Again, Josh, I can't get too personal on this, but I have one very close friend who I know very well, and she there is a lot of anger in her that she felt that the role of being a mommy was like obscured, held, glossed over from her by older women, and she is not wrong, I think, in that regard. And just not to get too far in this video, we just did an interview on it too, but the way society views like motherhood, like starting a family, being a homemaker, the way that society just, excuse my French, just shits on it, totally disgusting. That's probably one of the most valuable careers out there. Granted, it's not going into an office every day. It's probably better than that, being a mom, raising kids, taking care of the home. That's worth something. That's worth a lot. And it's a shame that we as a society seem to have forgotten it. And we also seem to ostracize, the women who actually are clever enough to pursue it. Shame on us.
I mean, this is a pretty recent phenomenon in Western worlds, and I mean, it is not like this in a long shot overseas. I mean, especially in like Arab nations. I mean, it is the complete opposite. Or I mean, in pretty much most societies right now, they're still living in the culture of, call it America in the 1940s and 50s, when we still had those same values. What is it that has kind of made these values be separated, do you think?
The mind virus of liberalism and feminism. I'd start there. And I'd also look at the people who pushed it, because I think sooner or later they will have a lot to answer for. But that's another video.
Yeah, so this was one of the more recent chapters in Closing of the American Mind that I have read. They're now starting to go on to the school system. I'm on part 2 now, so we'll kind of update you guys as we finish reading. These are not particularly our thoughts. Justin made a lot of his own maybe there.
Yeah, so go ahead and push the dislike button. Yeah, we understand. So,
but if you would like to hear this from the GOAT himself, Mr. Alan Bloom, he will articulate it 100 times better than us Rubeltons.